Cassian Wolfe walked steadily through the gleaming corridors of Stellar Nexus, the renowned diplomatic hub of the galaxy. His footsteps echoed softly on the metallic floor, blending with the gentle hum of energy resonating throughout the space. The silver-gray protective suit he wore reflected the ambient light, giving him an air of both strength and poise. As a seasoned diplomat from the Terran Accord, Cassian was no stranger to high-stakes missions. Yet, this assignment stirred an unshakable sense of anticipation within him. "Mr. Wolfe," a deep, resonant voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. Cassian turned to see Counselor Elyra, a tall figure with shimmering silver skin and eyes that sparkled like distant stars. Elyra's flowing ceremonial robes moved as if alive, radiating an aura of authority and mystique. "We are honored to welcome you here," Elyra said, his gaze scrutinizing Cassian's every move. "The honor is mine, Counselor," Cassian replied, his tone calm yet tinged with curiosity. He had been invited to the Preservation Wing, a part of the embassy that few were permitted to see. Passing through layers of advanced security, Cassian began to sense this was no ordinary diplomatic tour. At the heart of a vast, amber-lit chamber stood a crystalline structure, unlike anything Cassian had ever seen. Intricate patterns etched into its surface seemed to pulse with a rhythm that resonated deeply within the room. Inside the crystal, suspended in an almost ethereal stillness, was a figure that took Cassian's breath away, a woman with light blue skin that faintly glowed, her silver blue hair floating as if caught in an invisible current. Her form-fitting suit, crafted from an otherworldly material, shimmered softly in the light. "This is Princess Elyra," Elyra explained, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The rightful heir to our throne. She was betrayed and imprisoned in this state over 3 centuries ago." Cassian moved closer, captivated by the sight before him. Though he had never met her, there was something profoundly magnetic about Elyra. "She looks peaceful, almost like she's merely sleeping." "This is no ordinary sleep," Elyra said, shaking his head. "She was poisoned with a compound specifically designed to halt all biological functions without ending life. We've exhausted every method to revive her, cutting-edge medical technology, ancient mystical rituals, even experiments with temporal energy. Nothing has worked." Before Cassian could ask further questions, a sudden alert pulled Elyra away, leaving him alone in the chamber with Elyra. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of energy emanating from the crystal. Cassian felt an inexplicable pull toward the crystalline structure. His eyes locked on the glowing patterns that seemed to intensify as he approached. Compelled by a force he couldn't explain, Cassian reached out to touch the smooth surface of the crystal. To his shock, his hand passed through as though it were air. His fingers brushed lightly against Elyra's lips. Her eyes snapped open. A brilliant light erupted, illuminating the chamber as a sharp gasp broke the silence. Cassian froze, his gaze locked with Elyra's starlit eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice melodic but firm, echoing with an otherworldly resonance. Cassian steadied himself, speaking carefully. "My name is Cassian Wolfe. I'm a diplomat from the Terran Accord. And I think I just woke you up." In that moment, the galaxy shifted. Elyra's awakening wasn't just the revival of a long-lost princess, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Old enemies who had thrived in her absence would soon resurface, and long-dormant conflicts would ignite. Yet, perhaps the greatest mystery of all was why Cassian, a human from a distant world, had been the one to awaken her. The story truly begins here. The room erupted into chaos as ancient alarms blared throughout the stellar nexus. Crimson emergency lights flooded the chamber, and reinforced barriers slammed into place over the exits. Cassian shielded his eyes from the blinding flashes as Elyra gasped for breath, her silver-blue hair cascading around her. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is happening?" Before Cassian could answer, a computerized voice echoed through the chamber. "Unauthorized awakening detected. Initiating quarantine protocols." From vents above, a fine, misty gas began to descend, the sharp chemical scent pricking Cassian's nose. His suit's filtration system activated automatically, but Elyra remained exposed, still weakened from centuries of stasis. "Can you move?" Cassian asked urgently, stepping closer to her. Elyra shook her head, struggling to stand as her legs wavered. "The preservation matrix, my body hasn't fully adjusted. I'm too weak." Without hesitation, Cassian reached through the crystalline barrier once more, feeling a strange, tingling resistance before his arm wrapped around Elyra's waist. The moment their skin touched, the preservation field flickered and deactivated entirely, sending Elyra tumbling into his arms. Her body was warm, and an almost electric sensation passed through him as he studied her. I'm sorry for the familiarity," Cassian said as he helped her stand. Elyra managed a faint smile despite the circumstances. "You've already broken royal protocols by waking me. Cassian Wolfe. A little more impropriety won't kill me, though this gas might." Cassian couldn't help but grin at her sharp wit. But the situation demanded urgency. "We need to move," he said, glancing toward the nearest control panel. "Is there a way to override the protocols?" Elyra nodded, her expression serious. "There should be an emergency bypass on the far wall." As the gas thickened, Cassian guided her toward the console, Elyra leaning heavily against him with every step. Her frailty was evident, but there was also a determined fire in her eyes that drove her forward. The sound of pounding footsteps and muffled shouting reached them from beyond the sealed doors. Cassian could feel the tension building in the air. Someone was coming, and it wasn't to help. "They're here," Elyra murmured, her voice barely audible. "Who?" Cassian asked, his protective instincts flaring. "The Obsidian Order," she said, her tone heavy with dread. "They're the ones who poisoned me. If they know I'm awake." She didn't finish the sentence, but her fears spoke volumes. Cassian's grip tightened around her as they reached the control panel. Elyra's fingers danced across the ancient interface, the symbols lighting up in response to her touch. Despite her weakened state, her movements were precise, her royal training evident. "They'll try to kill you, too," Elyra warned, not looking up from the console. "I've dealt with dangerous people before," Cassian replied, his tone steady. "But I've never let fear stop me from doing what's right." Elyra paused, glancing up at him with a look of quiet admiration. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Cassian Wolfe." "Why not both?" he quipped, earning a faint laugh from her. The console beeped as Elyra's override sequence completed, and the mist began to clear, just as the main doors groaned open. However, a new sound echoed through the chamber, a low, mechanical hum that sent a chill down Cassian's spine. "They've breached the outer perimeter," Elyra said, her face pale. "They won't let me leave this place alive." Cassian's mind raced, calculating their options. He reached for the communicator on his suit's collar. "Cassian Wolfe to Terran Accord," he said clearly, his voice calm but firm. Priority 1 Diplomatic Emergency. I'm in the Stellar Nexus Preservation Wing with Princess Elyra. Hostile forces are attempting to neutralize us. Request immediate intervention. The response came swiftly. Terran Accord receiving. Security teams are en route. Hold your position. Elyra leaned closer to him. Her voice barely a whisper. They won't risk violating your diplomatic immunity. Not even the Obsidian Order would provoke an interstellar incident that could unite the galaxy against them. Cassian raised an eyebrow. You seem well versed in diplomatic law for someone who's been asleep for 3 centuries. Elyra gave him a sly smile, the tension in her expression momentarily easing. I was a scholar before I was a princess. And besides, I've always been fond of loopholes. The pounding footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of weapons charging. Cassian positioned himself protectively in front of Elyra, his determination unwavering. Stay behind me, he said. Elyra's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. You've already done the impossible today, Cassian Wolfe. Let's see if you can do it again. As the doors began to tremble under the assault of the attackers, Cassian and Elyra braced themselves for the fight of their lives, their shared determination sparking a bond that would only grow stronger in the challenges ahead. The chamber doors buckled under the relentless force of the attackers' assault. Elyra gripped Cassian's arm tightly, her breathing still uneven but her resolve unwavering. For centuries, she had been a silent observer, trapped in stasis while her enemies thrived. Now, awakened in the arms of a human diplomat, she realized the galaxy had shifted in ways she could hardly fathom, and her survival depended on this unlikely ally. As the doors finally gave way, Cassian stepped forward, shielding Elyra with his body. A small squad of armed attackers, clad in the dark armor of the Obsidian Order, stormed in, their weapons trained on the pair. Princess Elyra, one of them sneered, his voice distorted by the helmet's modulator. You should have stayed asleep. It would have been less painful. Cassian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You're trespassing in a Terran Accord-protected facility. Stand down now, or you'll provoke a galactic incident. The lead soldier hesitated, glancing briefly at his squad. The implications of Cassian's words were clear. An attack on a Terran diplomat would unleash consequences far beyond what the Obsidian Order could control. But their hesitation didn't last long. Orders are orders, the soldier growled, raising his weapon. No witnesses. Before he could fire, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the room. Elyra stepped forward, her eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. The residual energy from her stasis field seemed to respond to her emotions, manifesting as a shimmering barrier that knocked the attackers off their feet. Cassian looked back at her in awe. You could have done that the whole time. Elyra gave him a faint smirk. It's been centuries since I used these abilities. I needed a warm-up. The attackers quickly regrouped, their weapons recalibrating to counter Elyra's unexpected energy field. Cassian grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a nearby access tunnel. We can't hold them off forever. There's another way out of here. Elyra hesitated for a fraction of a second, glancing at the Obsidian soldiers now recovering and advancing again. Then she tightened her grip on Cassian's hand and followed him into the dimly lit passage. As they navigated the maze-like tunnels beneath Stellar Nexus, Elyra struggled to keep up, her body still weak from stasis. Cassian slowed his pace, adjusting to her needs without hesitation. You're surprisingly calm for someone being hunted by intergalactic assassins, Elyra said between breaths, her tone laced with curiosity. Cassian chuckled softly. Diplomatic training. It's all about keeping a cool head under pressure. Your training didn't cover waking alien royalty, did it? No, but it did teach me to improvise. He glanced back at her, a playful glint in his eyes. And besides, I've had worse days. Elyra couldn't help but laugh. Despite their dire situation, you humans are endlessly fascinating. So resilient. So, she trailed off, searching for the right word. Unpredictable. We try, Cassian replied with a grin. But before he could say more, a faint hum of energy filled the air, a sound that sent a chill down his spine. They found us, Elyra whispered, her voice tight with urgency. The walls around them began to glow faintly, a sure sign the Obsidian Order was using advanced tracking technology to close in. Cassian scanned their surroundings, his eyes landing on a service hatch above. There, he said, pointing. That leads to the upper levels. Can you climb? Elyra's legs trembled beneath her as she attempted to steady herself. Not fast enough. Without a word, Cassian stepped closer, his hands settling firmly at her waist. Hold on, he said, lifting her effortlessly toward the hatch. Elyra instinctively wrapped her arms around his shoulders for support as he pushed them both upward. The closeness of their bodies sent an unspoken spark between them. But there was no time to dwell on it. The moment they emerged into the upper corridor, Cassian sealed the hatch behind them. He turned to Elyra, whose cheeks carried a faint glow, not just from exertion, but from something else entirely. Thank you, she said softly, her gaze lingering on his. For what? For risking everything for someone you just met, Elyra replied. For believing I'm worth saving. Cassian's expression softened. It's not about belief. It's about knowing the right thing to do. And right now, the galaxy needs you alive. They pressed onward, finally reaching a secure observation deck. From the expansive window, they could see stellar nexus buzzing with activity. Terran Accord security forces had arrived, engaging the Obsidian Order in a fierce standoff. Elyra leaned against the glass, her reflection illuminated by the battle outside. I don't understand, she murmured. Why did you wake me? Out of all the beings in this galaxy, why was it you? Cassian stepped beside her, his voice steady but thoughtful. I don't think it was chance. Maybe there's something about humans, about how we adapt, how we survive, that made it possible. Elyra turned to face him, her silvery blue eyes searching his. Or maybe it's just you, Cassian Wolfe. Before he could respond, the observation deck door slid open, and a squad of Terran soldiers entered. Their leader, a stern woman in tactical armor, saluted sharply. Ambassador Wolfe. Princess Elyra. You're safe now. We've secured the facility. Elyra exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she'd awakened. But as she looked back at Cassian, she knew their journey was far from over. The Obsidian Order's attempts on her life would only grow more desperate, and the fragile alliance between Earth and her people was now tied to their shared survival. Safe is relative, Cassian said grimly, meeting Elyra's gaze. This is just the beginning. Elyra nodded. Then we move forward. Together. Their bond, unexpected, unbreakable, had begun to form the foundation of something far greater than themselves. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about forging a future that no one had dared to imagine. The Terran Accord's flagship glided through the vast expanse of space, its sleek frame reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside the command room, Cassian Wolfe stood alongside Princess Elyra, both framed by the expansive viewport that offered a breathtaking view of the galaxy they now shared responsibility for. Yet, the calm exterior belied the storm brewing in the hearts of those who sought to stop them. Elyra stood tall, her presence radiating both grace and determination. The days since her awakening had been tumultuous, marked by attacks, political maneuvering, and the unveiling of truths long buried. Yet, against all odds, she had survived. More than that, she had begun to thrive, thanks to Cassian's unwavering support. "Our enemies won't stop," Elyra said softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The Obsidian Order will do everything in their power to ensure I never take the throne." Cassian crossed his arms, his gaze steady. "Then we don't give them the chance. We take the fight to them, not with weapons, but with something they fear more: unity." Elyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Unity. A concept that has eluded my people for generations." Cassian turned to her, his voice firm but kind. "That's why they fear you. You represent change. And now, with Earth standing beside you, they know their time is running out." As Elyra and Cassian navigated the complexities of interstellar diplomacy, their bond deepened. But the greatest surprise came not from their political victories, but from within Elyra herself. One evening, as they reviewed plans for a formal alliance, Elyra suddenly paused, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. "Cassian," she said, her voice trembling, "something's changed." Cassian's brow furrowed with concern. "What is it? Are you hurt?" Elyra shook her head, her silvery blue eyes shining with wonder. "No. It's not that. It's life." The realization hit them both at once. Elyra carried within her a child, a hybrid of human and celestial blood. Something that had never existed before. "This changes everything," Elyra whispered, her hands trembling. "The noble houses will see this as a threat. The Obsidian Order will see it as an abomination." Cassian reached out, his hand resting gently on hers. "And the galaxy will see it as hope. A bridge between our peoples." The child, whom they would later name Sylas, became a beacon of possibility. His existence challenged centuries of rigid traditions and prejudices, forcing both humanity and the Celestials to confront the potential of their shared future. The birth of Sylas sparked chaos across the galaxy. The Obsidian Order intensified their attacks, desperate to eliminate what they viewed as a symbol of their own demise. But amidst the chaos, a new coalition emerged, young leaders from both celestial noble houses and Earth's diplomatic corps. Inspired by Elyra and Cassian's example, at the stellar nexus, an emergency summit was convened. Representatives from every celestial house, along with Terran diplomats, gathered to discuss the implications of Sylas's birth. Elyra, now visibly carrying the weight of her pregnancy, stood before the assembly with Cassian at her side. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the power to reshape the galaxy. "For centuries, my people have clung to traditions that divide us," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "We have feared change, feared the unknown. But look where that fear has brought us: stagnation, betrayal, and war. It is time to let go of that fear." She placed a hand on her abdomen, drawing the attention of everyone present. "This child is not a threat. He is a promise. A promise that we can be more than we are alone. That our differences make us stronger, not weaker." The room fell silent. Even the most hardened skeptics couldn't deny the truth in her words. When Sylas was born, The galaxy held its breath. The child's arrival was marked by an extraordinary event, a surge of energy that radiated across the stars, felt by celestial and human alike. His very existence was proof of what Elyra and Cassian had fought for, unity. Sylas had traits of both his parents, his father's resilience and adaptability, his mother's celestial grace and energy. But what truly set him apart was his ability to bridge the gap between two worlds. At just a few weeks old, Sylas exhibited control over energy fields that Celestials spent centuries mastering. Yet he approached them with the curiosity and ingenuity of a human child. His birth not only united the celestial noble houses under Elyra's rule but also solidified Earth's position as an equal partner in the galaxy's future. Years later, Elyra, Cassian, and Sylas stood together on the balcony of the newly rebuilt stellar nexus. Below them, delegates from across the galaxy gathered to celebrate the official formation of a new interstellar alliance. Elyra turned to Cassian, her expression soft but resolute. "When I was trapped in stasis, I thought my story had ended. I never imagined it was only the beginning." Cassian smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You woke up the galaxy, Elyra. And in doing so, you gave it a chance to become something greater." Sylas, now a young boy, stepped forward, his bright eyes scanning the crowd below. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice filled with innocent curiosity. Elyra knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "Now, we build bridges, Sylas. Between species, between worlds, and between hearts." Cassian placed a hand on his son's other shoulder, his gaze filled with pride. "And we do it together." As the sun rose over the stellar nexus, casting its light across the galaxy, the family stood as a symbol of unity and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the smallest spark could ignite a revolution. The stellar nexus gleamed under the twin suns of the celestial homeworld, a testament to the resilience and unity that had emerged from centuries of division. The Grand Chamber, once a place of rigid tradition and political stalemates, now pulsed with new energy. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the hall, their voices a harmonious blend of species, languages, and ideas. At the heart of it all stood Princess Elyra, now Queen Elyra, radiating strength and grace. Her ceremonial gown shimmered with hues of silver and blue, reflecting her celestial heritage, while her firm stance and determined gaze mirrored the indomitable spirit she had forged through adversity. Beside her stood Cassian Wolfe, the Terran diplomat whose courage had not only awakened her but also ignited a new era of interstellar cooperation. Between them stood their son, Sylas, the living embodiment of hope and unity, his eyes alight with the starlit glow of his mother and the fierce determination of his father. Elyra stepped forward, her voice carrying effortlessly across the Grand Chamber. "For centuries, our galaxy has been a tapestry of division, separate threads, each beautiful but isolated. Today, we weave those threads together into something stronger, something greater." Her gaze swept across the gathered delegates, pausing on each faction that had once opposed her. "Sylas is not merely my son. He is a bridge, a testament to what we can achieve, and we set aside fear and embrace the unknown." Cassian stepped beside her, his voice steady and powerful. "Humanity has always believed in the strength of unity, in the idea that diversity is not a weakness but a gift. Together, we have faced threats, overcome challenges, and proven that our differences make us better." Sylas looked up at his parents, then out at the crowd. Though still young, His presence commanded attention. "The future doesn't belong to one world or one species," he said. His voice clear and confident. "It belongs to all of us. Together, we can build a galaxy where no one is left behind." The room erupted into applause, a resounding affirmation of their vision. Not everyone in the galaxy welcomed this new era. The Obsidian Order, though weakened, made one final attempt to disrupt the Alliance. Just as the ceremony concluded, alarms blared across the Nexus. A fleet of dark, angular ships appeared on the horizon, their weapons charged and aimed directly at the Nexus. Elyra remained calm, her gaze unwavering. "Let them come," she said quietly. "This is their last chance to choose peace." Cassian activated a communicator embedded in his suit. "Terran Defense Fleet. Hold position. Do not fire unless fired upon." The Nexus's defenses shimmered to life, an impenetrable barrier of energy protecting the structure. Inside, the gathered delegates watched in tense silence as the enemy ships hovered ominously. Moments stretched into eternity before the lead ship powered down its weapons. A transmission crackled through the chamber's communication array. "We surrender," a voice admitted reluctantly. "The galaxy has spoken, and we cannot stand against it." The delegates erupted into cheers, and Elyra exchanged a relieved smile with Cassian. Even the most steadfast enemies had been forced to accept the new reality. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, Elyra, Cassian, and Sylas stood on the balcony of the Nexus, watching the stars. The galaxy stretched before them, infinite and full of possibility. "I never thought I'd see this," Elyra admitted, her voice soft with emotion. "A galaxy united. A future where my people and yours stand side by side." Cassian took her hand, his expression tender. "You made it possible. Your strength, your vision, it woke more than just a sleeping princess. It woke an entire galaxy." Sylas, now leaning on the railing, glanced back at his parents. "What's next?" he asked, his youthful curiosity shining through. Elyra knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Next, we lead. We guide this galaxy toward the future it deserves. And we remind them every day that unity is not a destination, it's a journey." Cassian nodded. "And we take that journey together. As a family." The three of them stood there, silhouetted against the stars, their bond unbreakable. In the distance, the galaxy seemed to hum with newfound life, a reflection of the hope that had been born from one extraordinary moment, a human's touch awakening a princess and changing the fate of the universe. As the first rays of dawn spread across the Nexus, the family turned to face the future, ready to lead a galaxy transformed by love, resilience, and the courage to believe in what could be.